without accountability, when one seeks ownership, it is from a space of possession. It's from a space of possession. When one seeks from a space of possession, the actualization versus the self-actualization comes from the space of lack. In accepting the self-actualization, the self-realization process, the self-actualization, you start to learn the aptitude, grand rising. You start to learn the aptitude of ownership, assessment, learning, becoming the student, becoming open to learning, becoming open to the process, versus the mindset versus the events of life. I'm uploading the video now onto my TikTok when we got into the aspects of understanding the events, i.e. the eyes. I always talk about the eyes. The events are the eyes, or the identities of self. The events inside of our lives are based on the patterns and the habits of the eyes, or the identities of self. And then the people are the representations or the trigger points of the behaviors and the reactions based on these eyes of ourself in these events that happen to our lives. Before I started going through my process, I had to understand, and again, I have an example. I'm going to give the example in a little bit. But before I came into the process, or a lot of us come into our process, we have to realize that we're going to, everything that is that thought, that crazy that thought is to stimulate the thought process for us to think. We're going through a process with ourselves of the idea. Everything that you take in becomes that idea, that ideal. That idea structures down into the events that happen, how we assess the events into our space. Those events inside of our space then help us understand the people, or the conduits, or the behaviors and the patterns based on these events that are inside of our lives. So a lot of times we always go from, it's the people, it's the events that are happening, and it's all based on one idea. But when we look at it from that point, you have to think about it like this. If I'm looking at it from the point of, it's the people, and it's these people, because of these events and this one idea, it kind of keeps me in a linear point of not taking time. I can't assess how that idea even was implanted into my mind. What is this idea attached to? I always talk about this aspects of reaction. And if you're able to react to it, it's simply because you're on that frequency. You're on that bandwidth. You're in the space or the structure of those ideas. So now your events have to match that structure of those ideals. Whether it's an intrusive thought, whatever the thought may be, the only way that it can attach, the only way that it can take shape, take form, and create the events and the people and the places and the idea, all these things into our lives, is only because there's something already rooted there. This becomes the key of accepting the self-actualization. It's like if you say, use an example. If you go every single day and you say that you're sick, for an example, and now everybody around you has let's build a better example. You have a cough. Throat congested, you got some mucus in your throat. You immediately will go to WebMD. You'll go online, you go on the internet, WebMD. So that's the event. You go to the event. WebMD is your internet. That's your event. And then you look for based on your patterns and your habits, you look for people that match and are able to trigger the behavior that is that cough. So now you on WebMD and you done seen 17 different deadly diseases when all you really need is some ginger, clear all that shit the fuck up. But it's because we depend on the attachment. I talked about it earlier today. Like, if you notice, I cut my hair today. Then cut my hair, then shaved the sides and lined everything up. I did it myself. Like, I just literally, I started lining up my beard because I had to assess that the reason I wasn't doing it, I was telling myself, it was like, I'm sacrificing. I'm sacrificing cutting my hair because I'm trying to save up. I'm getting to save up. I'm getting the business. I'm getting my company together. I'm building for this. I'm doing for this. I'm doing for that. But then in that same sentence, I'm looking at myself and I'm saying that I'm abundant. I'm looking at myself and saying that I'm waking up saying I'm in gratitude. I'm waking up saying that I'm grateful. I'm waking up saying all of these things, but I'm not understanding the symbolism, the imprint of the symbolism. Every time that I get up and I look at myself, every event that I've ever subscribed to is in the symbolism of my hair. Every event that's in symbolism to what I subscribe to is based on how I carry myself in that day-to-day basis. So now every person, based on triggering the behavior, whether it's this, when you understand the aspect of that duality, there's going to be things in my space that are going to trigger me and trigger my behaviors so that I now can take the assessment of this idea that's rooted in entitlement. So my idea, for the example, my idea being rooted in entitlement was, it costs $40 to cut and get my hair cut. That line up everything, bid everything, $40, that's $30, plus the tip, everything in there. And then every other week I'm spending $30 in the aspects of getting my hair lined up, just keeping myself in that identity, keeping the idea thriving, keeping the idea living. I had to keep that idea going. So now I need events to match that idea. So now I need people, i.e. the behaviors and the reactions to keep me inside of that idea. So I'm not taking self-actualization. I'm just actualizing that, okay, it's because of the people. I'm seeing it. Okay. It's because of the people. It's because of the people in my life that I do this, this, and this. But here comes the key. The longer that you stay inside of that process, the more weighted down you become based on what you're not working on. Everything becomes secondary. Everything that you need to do as self becomes secondary. It becomes externalized. It becomes, oh, I'm a god. It becomes, oh, I'm a goddess. Oh, it becomes, I'm a king. Oh, it becomes, I'm a queen. But you're only using that identity, those eyes, that idea to solidify time served. You're only solidifying the time served. Nothing else can come in. No other events can happen. So now you're looking in your space and you wonder why nothing seems to change. Is because you're still subscribing to the same events. You're still subscribing to the same people, the same behaviors, the same reactions, the same patterns, the same habits, the same habits, and the same eyes, the same identity. So you're wondering, but I'm here and I deserve to be. I always tell you, you're deserving, but you're not entitled. That entitlement is going to stop you from doing that work. That entitlement is going to leave you in a bias. It's going to leave you seeking, in that external sense outside of you, something to fill that void that you aren't wanting. You're not even filling this is the thing, you can't fill a void. You can put things in front of the void, but these things start to degenerate. You can keep putting light in front of the void. You can keep putting whatever you want to project in front of your voids, but it's going to disintegrate because energy doesn't die. So if you put in light, we understand light is a burn. By the time you see the sun, by the time you see the light from the sun outside of yourself, hit the sky, hit the ground, everything that it's doing, it's already done before it even hit that point. So that's what I mean by that time served. You keep highlighting, if you keep highlighting events based on you can highlight, I remember highlighting things in my life all the time. This and this and this and this. But then I had to realize it was so easy for me to highlight these events that were happening in my life. Highlight the birthday, highlight the moves. But when it came time for me to sit down with the steps, that was a whole different, that was the process. That process is sitting down with those steps. That process is sitting down with those steps. Because those steps is your structure, is your standard, your structure, your stability. The stability of that structure. The stability of those standards. The stability of those standards. The standard of that structure. The standard of that stability. This when we're going into the aspects of ownership versus the events of lack. If I'm always focused on the events of lack, then my intentions are set in the events of lack. If I'm always trying to think from a sense of ownership and not owning if I'm not owning or assessing those points of lack in my life, then every time that I step into ownership, now my ownership is based upon possession. So I'm not even going into that space. Now my emotions are possessing that space. My reactions, my behaviors, I'm not even there. You go through an entire process with yourself where you realize that every time you become aware of a moment, you become emotionally present, that you start sitting there, you're like, I haven't been aware of my life for the last 3-4 years. I haven't been present in my life for the last 3-4 years. I've never been present. I can remember the events that happened in my life, or I can remember the people that happened in my life, or I can remember somewhat of the idea, or I have an intellectualized idea of the aspects, but they're never in sync. This is when we talk about the actual aspect, when you think about the law of focus. The law of focus. You can't even tap into the law of attraction without first understanding the law of focus. The law of focusing, the law of focus, the law of focus, the law of duality, the law of attraction. When you start really applying to these mechanics on a universal aspect by accepting that you are that creator, that means you got to accept everything that you created from that point back. That means you just can't say, ooh, clean slate. I'm going to ignore everything that I did in the past. I'm going to ignore all of this. And I'm going to keep going. No, you can't. No. All of that was a creation of you. All of that was created by your ideas. All of those events were created by your ideal. The ideal of your identity, the eyes. All of those people are the perception points of your perspective of your idea of how you survived through the lack mentality, through the traumatic experience, how you survived through it or around it. Really, you didn't go through it, you went around it. So now that you're sitting here and we're coming into this process of the shadow work, you're taking ownership. Now you coming into that space. Now you got to go through it. Now you really got to go through it. See, you had an idea of what going through it was based on that was in the shadow. That was in that point I didn't want to deal with. I got an idea what it looks like. I got an idea what pain. I got an idea what this looks like. I got an idea what a relationship looks like. I got an idea with friendships. I got this idea. But that idea is always based from a point of lack. You're in a relationship on a point of lack, or the job based on a point of lack. It's the employee mentality. When you enter these things, remember, I always talk about your trauma is your boss. That's what you say every time you come to a point to when you're triggered and then you react. You're acknowledging and you're saying, my trauma is my boss. The things I'm not dealing with are my bosses. So you saying you a king, you saying you a boss, you saying you a boss bitch, boss, real nigga, wherever you at, don't matter. It don't matter because you're not doing the work to reflect that. That takes ownership. You got to own everything. That means you got to go through that moment with your, like I give the example. I've told it, my favorite, I always use Jay-Z as that example. After reading the book, Decoded and all of that stuff. I remember Jay-Z said at a point, he was like, when it became between albums, and many artists do this, but I like Jay-Z on this. Many artists, when they're working on an album, they don't shave, he don't get his hair cut. He stays in the booth. He stays in there, in that space, in that process, in that darkness, creating. I don't care about appearance. I'm not trying to be seen right now. I'm trying to make sure that I'm heard. I'm trying to make sure that and as I expound upon it, I'm trying to make sure that I'm heard. But I'm not talking about being heard physically. I'm talking about being heard energetically. Because that's the idea. My idea, that energetic cycling of that idea, that's what's being heard. So what is it going through? What events in my life is this energetic idea going through? What people are conduits or places of the reflections of that ideal is it going through? See, this is the aspect of understanding that alignment. But you got to understand what point you're at. See, me being in that state of alignment the alignment's only based on the work. You're clearing out the space. You're not coming down here I gotta wonder what am I down here for? You already know why you're down here. You're coming down here to figure out the why of you. The why of yourself. Why did I go through this? Why was this so heavy? Why did this happen? You say it to yourself back and forth all the time. You slip between ownership and the lack mentality. You slip between the idea of ownership and that lack mentality all the time. And since your intention, your focus are always on what you're lacking, that ownership is scary. To say to yourself that I am within the state of self-actualization and I am in gratitude. And for everything that I do, every result is a necessary tool and a necessary key for me to move forward. Every result is a necessary key to the results that I have to face. Without accountability, any solution doesn't exist. Without self-accountability, without the self-assessment, every solution or every idea will be to prolong the problem. All it's going to do is prolong the problem. So now think about the events in your life based on that lack of accountability because of the lack mentality in play. And then think about the people in your life. Who's triggering you in your life? Who's triggering you in a sense that's forcing you to have to sit down with yourself? But you see yourself, I don't want to face that. I want to sit down. You can tell usually because somebody that's triggering you in a sense that's based on your growth is going to make you uncomfortable and is going to force you into a state of projection. That means you're going to say, so have you done it? When did you do this? What about this? You're going to go down this list of these false things that give you a sense of progress. But then on the other end of that, that's the ownership bubble, possession. What you're basically saying is, what possessed you to tell me that? What gives you the right to tell me that? But if that person comes to you and be like, because I'm doing that internal work. I was told, I was given that. You came to me. We having a conversation. I'm not thinking about conversation. I'm thinking about comprehension. So whenever you say something to me and it hits me energetically, I absorb. But now I come back out in comprehension. Now I have the new idea. Now I look at the events. I listen to the structure of your sentence, what you say. I listen to the stability in your emotions when you say it. I listen to the standard. That means the beginning, the standard, that quality is based on beginning, middle, and end, or rather end, middle, beginning. I listen to when you say the story. See, most people, when we go into that space, especially when you come to me for a consultation, a lot of times, some people come to me for consultations and they start in the middle. They start somewhere near the beginning or the middle, or they start towards the beginning. And the sentence will sound like this when you talking about the beginning. It becomes romanticized. I did this and then this happened. That's the beginning. So then you have to start going back. You're speaking beginning to end. I'm looking into beginning. So I'm looking at that end point. I'm building all the way back. That's that self-actualization. Because now as I'm looking into the space, after I'm done with a consultation, done with a session, done with a reading, done with a live, done whatever I'm doing, I always go through that same process. It's automatic. That process is an automatic now function. My subconscious is now tuned to self-actualize. This must be needed. How do I assess it? How do I go through it? So now inside of that space, now the new idea, which is based upon alignment, the new events, which are based upon alignment, the behaviors, my new behaviors, and my new myself, I have now self-actualized and become that singular point. So I am the events, the patterns and behaviors, that's the am, the people. That's my behavior. That's my response. Now it's the response in assessing my behavior. Now it's the facing my patterns, facing my habits, assessing patterns and habits. So I remain in that singular point, that I with myself. That way so something now when things come through, it's like there's less chatter. When things come into the space, I'm open. I'm present. I remain present. I remain open. I thought one of the major factors for me inside of a space with myself was you have to shut off. No. The reason that the Hulk can control it is because he was always open. The reason that Venom and Brock could merge together because Brock was always open. The only way you can come into a space is based on your level of openness. How open you are to yourself. You're not open to yourself, you can't be open to anybody else. And that openness requires that apology. It requires that apology. It requires that acceptance. It requires that acknowledgement. Not from the sense of the lack mentality. Assessing and seeing, I was lacking based on, now I must take ownership. Where I lacked, I must take self-accountability and ownership with myself. Because if I'm not taking this accountability with myself, then when it comes to ownership, it's going to be based on possession. So now everything that's based on possession is based on the lack. So now every space that I go into, every event that happens in my life is going to be based on lack. That means any new idea that I get is going to be based on lack. That means if I'm thinking about getting to a bag, that means one, why am I chasing the bag? That means if I'm thinking about getting to something, that means it's not me yet. That means I haven't become it yet. If I'm saying that trigger word to myself, I got to or I get to. If I say, like, this is how you start breaking down self-actualization. Because if I'm sitting there, I'm saying I got to go to work or I got to wake up, I got to catch myself. Supposed to be low. Lucy, you're supposed to be moving in gratitude now. Oh, so I get to wake up. I get to go on my run. I get to assess. I get to speak. I get to speak. That's from that sense of ownership. So now I get to learn because I'm speaking. I get to move because now I'm speaking. I get to be active. So now since I'm in that state, now I'm checking it. So now the conversations start to change. So now when I hear I got to or I have to from a sense of the lacking or from the sense of the event that I must go to, now I can start saying you ain't got to go. Now for myself, I ain't got to go. I got to go here. No, I don't. I don't have to go in. I don't have to. I can choose to. I can choose to, but knowing, once you know, this is why I always talk about that ownership, that doing what you truly want, what you truly desire, what truly is based in your purpose, your potential, your power, your authority. That's based on discipline of that I, becoming that singular point. That's based on the discipline of me understanding my patterns and my habits versus the events that I go into. That's me taking accountability for the people or the reflections or the mirrors of my behaviors and my reactions and how I react. That's the ownership. Greetings. How I charge myself. Why am I charging myself? Why am I putting myself in this position? What is this position teaching me? What is this position teaching me? What is this space teaching me? What am I going to learn here? When you start moving in that narrative, it changes the aspects. This is how we start getting into the surface, getting beyond the surface, getting beyond the subsurface, getting beyond the subsurface, getting deep into the in-depth, into the assessment. This is where, Grand Rising, when you're coming to me, when you're coming to us as guides, especially the shadow guides, when you coming to us and we say, all right, cool, we got to take some self-actualization real quick. What's your story? Then we listen. We listen to the cues. We listen. We're listening. We're listening to your energy. We're hearing your energy. We're hearing the pings, the dings. We're hearing the processors go off. We're hearing it. We're hearing the inflections. So it becomes a difference between me being able to sit there and be like, all right, cool. Because I had clients, I had a session Saturday. Came in, a lot of chatter because they just went through their process of the self-actualization, the first levels of it that we had talked about in the last session. Just went through the moment. There were all of the chatter, all of the realization of all of the demons that were all of their demons, all of the deity, all of the Damians, all of the things, all of the work, all of the aspects. I was like, all right, cool. I let them speak. I absorb it. Bring them to a calm point. Because you have to allow them to let it out. Bring them to a calm point. Brought it to a calm point. Okay, cool. I was like, let's do a meditation. Because I noticed inside when you were telling your story, you said, you asked, you named aspects of your shadow. Okay. Each one of those aspects of your shadow have ownership or possession rather over your inner child. Let's go to one came up. I was like, let's go to that one. Took him into the breath stance. Took him into the breaths. Took them through the cycles of breathing. Told them to visualize that memory, because we've talked about that memory in previous sessions. Hold on to that memory. Visualize that memory, the sights, the smells. Go into that space. I want you to say something this simple. I'm here. I'm present. I love you. This is everybody. I'll do different ones. I'm here. I'm present. They sat in the space. I'm taking them through the breathing exercise. I'm guiding them through. We've cleansed the space. Everything up to that point. Sat there. Nice. Wasn't even 5 minutes. Wasn't even 5 minutes. Brought them back. Brought them back. Yes, that's an NLP. That's hypnotherapy. Brought them back. First moment of self-actualization. See, a lot of times because we've been taught the love and light aspect, you gotta clear your mind. No, let the noise in. That's what has you stuck. You wanna keep something out. See, everything that you're doing is based on keeping something out. But until you understand that you gotta let the shit in, everything you're gonna do is you're gonna be based on avoidance. You must let it in. That thought that I can never do this, you gotta let that thought in. That idea that I can never do this, or the idea in my mind that I could never achieve the things that I wanted to achieve without something being a conduit being there, denied me from becoming that very aspect. See, this is that shift. This is that shift. You have a choice every time that you get up. You have a choice every day that you get up. How do you take on your day? What's the first thing inside of your day? What are the intentions behind that aspect of what you're doing inside of your day? Is it based on sitting in the process? Or is it based on avoiding the process? That conversation that I used to fear having, and then trying to find other ways to have them, was because I was afraid to have that conversation with myself. Because when I started sitting with that conversation, that's when I started feeling the weight. That's when I started feeling the weight, the doubt. That's when I started feeling it. That's when the abandonment issues came up. That's when the wounds came in. That's when the negative self-talk would pour itself in. But since I wasn't used to sitting in that space, that shit would, I gotta get out. I gotta go run somewhere. But I know my process. I understand my process was to become what is present. I understood that my process, my idea, the ideas that I embarked in and tapped into brought me to the new line of events that I now am of. To provide in that divine sense, to provide. But in order for me to provide, I must first provide for myself. In order to nurture, I must first learn nurturing of myself. In order for me to step into these new realities, I must take ownership. And this is that process. That self-actualization. You set it all up. There's no they, them, he, we, she, none of that. Everything that you want to, yeah, man, but everybody's it's a reflection of your own perspective. You clone and create a new identity every other day. What do you think would be left here? You create an identity up here every single day and try to sustain this identity. So what the events and the people are the clones of that event. So now you triggered. You upset because, oh my God, COVID, and oh my God, the COVID shit happened, and I was sad because of COVID. And okay. While you sat there while COVID happened, what were you really doing? I tell people all the time, just because you had a job didn't mean you weren't lazy. You say, I'm lazy. I'm not lazy. Just because you fill yourself with a bunch of movements, but you ignoring the steps, that's why you're lazy. You lack understanding your steps. That's laziness. That's procrastination. That's putting it off till tomorrow because you're not ready to sit with the steps. The honesty in your standard. The honesty in your structure. The honesty in your stability. Trying to maintain from a space of pressure. Because pressure is based in lack. I have no pressure on the vessel. I have no pressure on the vessel. Whatever comes into my space, I am to assess and move from there. I can't do anything with it if it's not in the present. It's in the present, therefore I deal with it here in the present. This is how you change that space and that reality. But you have to take the steps. I can't take the step for you. No guides, no true guides, no true healers, no true anybody that's in this aspects of this work can take the step for you. We can guide you. We can give you the methods. We can create this. We can help you teach you how to create spaces. We can teach you we can give you some, but your intention got to be set behind your own steps. Your intentions can't be set based on me taking the step for you. Because it'll work for me, because it's worked for me plenty of times. But it won't work for you. It'll work for me all day. Like, yeah, it works for me. It keeps working for me. But what about you? This is why I desire you to be the fucking best. This is why I desire you to be the fucking best. This is why I can come to you and say, I understand that the healing is destructive. This is why I can tell you that you're deserving, but you're not entitled. Because it comes from a space of transparency. Transparency is the patience. Transparency is the formula to your patience. The more patient that you become, the more transparent that you become. That transparency in that first levels for a lot of y'all is going to be like, damn, that's where that realization coming from. I was doing it from a space of lack. I was doing this based on lack. I was doing this based on fear. And I already told you there's only love, fear. Everything else is a subcategory of those two frequencies. So if I'm mad, I'm in fear. If I'm sad, I'm in fear. If I'm in one of these emotional states, I'm in fear. I haven't learned how to transmute it. Because you can be happy and have tears. That's your sadness transmuted. You can be ecstatic because you used to get angry, but now it's because you're happy. Because you learned that new focus point. You can't wait to use it. But it teaches you how to transmute. That means it's time for you to go to the next space. You can't keep doing the same shit. Can't keep making the same moves and expecting your year to change. You can't keep, I want this to happen and that to happen and that to happen and that. You must take that accountability. You must take that accountability. You must take the accountability in your lack mentality in order to take ownership of your energy. We'll say it one more time. Say it one more time. Actually, I got 3 lines we don't say. Without accountability, without self-accountability, ambition is obsession. Without accountability, that is based in solution is only to prolong the problem. Without accountability, my ownership becomes possession, and possession is based on lack. Without accountability, ownership becomes, and ownership is based on lack. Without accountability, all that I strive to do through an ambitious narrative is obsession. And obsession is based on lack. These are the programs that you got to face. Remember, I desire you to be the fucking best. But you got to understand this healing shit is destructive. You are deserving, but you are not entitled. And a level of honesty to help you pierce and go into that dark space, that darkness, is going to challenge all of those demons of entitlement and expectations. Everything from readings, setting up a consultation, as I grab my tea, or any other services, any other of my services that I do not announce. Hit me in the inbox, hit me in the DM, hit me in the inbox, hit me in the DM. And let's start that conversation. Let's start that conversation. Because all it does is start with that conversation. Conversation don't mean shit if you're not ready to comprehend yourself. I love you. We love us. Ashe.